Wheel of Genre, the show for listeners with a consuming hate for all others. Right now we are reading Harlan Ellison's Dangerous Visions anthology, every single short story going through one by one. I'm Zach, and this week I'm really interested in how the author sets up expectations and then flips them on their head.
I'm Bob. I'm really interested in Joe L. Hensley, the 6'6" made of meat, buzz-cutted man, as Harlan Ellison describes him. I guess I'm really actually interested in sentimentality and what part does that play in this story?
What happened in the story?
Yes, sorry. I'll take up my pen. In this story, quite an interesting story. We have a young boy. His father and mother are kind of pieces of work. The father doesn't like the boy. The boy is very different, and he doesn't talk much at all. He just says something every couple of days. He doesn't fit in with the other kids. He will spend time in the backyard. So his parents just think he's an oddball. His mother has had severe depression. We're not sure to what extent. And the father seems to be invested in the family, not invested in the family, invested in the family, not invested in the family. But we have all of these weird things have been happening with this boy named Randy. Animals seem to miraculously recover, or they suddenly, when they were mean animals before, they see Randy and now they are tame and they're good animals. Then we have the father does have terminal, I think, cancer, up to 5 months left or 4 months, something like that. And Randy goes to see him, and Randy seems to have healed him, so he's not going to die. He starts to make a full recovery. So we have that, and then we have little elements spread throughout. Maybe we'll talk more about this, but there are excerpts from other very famous works. Maybe we'll save what those are for a moment. In a moment, we'll talk about them soon.
Yeah. So, I mean, the boy is, the implication seems to be that he's like developmentally disabled, but it's also like he seems imbued with psychic powers of some kind. And when he sees things that he doesn't like, he either causes harm or, does this or that. So like, there's the example of the people driving down the street with a big mega horn saying, "Everyone come to, go see this event, yada, yada, yada." And I think he calls lightning down from the sky and fries them. So, yeah, it's interesting because I think for me, I couldn't help but read this almost as like a superhero origin story, especially the way that everyone talks about the state of the world. This short story is very good at kind of giving you like fleshing out the sense of of what this world is and where it is. And it's a world that is seemingly in a spot of decay, right? Like there's crime, political stuff happening. It's like wherever the author's gaze upon the world goes, it's all bad. But then you have this boy with these psychic powers, and he seems to be doing these like vaguely just things. You know what I mean? Like when people are mean, he punishes them. It feels very superhero origin story to me. Did you feel that way?
That's a very good point. I never really thought about superheroes so much, but that's a great point. It does feel like an origin story because he's so young. He kind of makes a promise that he's going to make more changes in the future. And you're right, he hasn't really figured out his powers. He also has hurt his mother somehow, and it's kind of unclear how. He says, "Oh, I wish I hadn't done that. She's okay now, but somehow she got injured because of him." But I think with those excerpts I said earlier, he's compared to the Buddha, he's compared to Muhammad, and he's compared to Jesus. So I feel like he's also, if it's a superhero origin story, it's more of a Messiah origin story and a kind of, as those are too, the paranormal Messiah, because I don't know if he's not really intentionally doing a lot of these things. They just happen around him, or it's just kind of, he has like a giving force to him. For example, his father sees him out with I think they're koi, no, they're goldfish, 3 goldfish in their pond. And the fish, they aged for so long and they're like, oh, what do we do with these fish? They're so old now, they're getting too big for the tank. So they put them out in the pond in the backyard and they're way older than they should be. They should all be dead. And the father says, I never feed those fish. My wife doesn't feed those fish. And one day he sees Randy just passing the fish back and forth between his hands. And it seems to heal the fish. He also, at one point, climbs a tree, and the tree, which was dead, starts blossoming the next day. So it is potentially superhero-like because he seems to be making a decision at the end. He says, I'll heal you, Father. But in the beginning, it's kind of passive and messianic in I'm not trying to start anything. Things are just happening around me feeling.
Well, and I'm just saying that the tropes of it feel superhero-like.
Sure.
In the sense, like not literally superhero-like, but the setup of a kind of like fallen world with a kind of figure who has supernatural powers that are kind of implicitly morality, that are enacted on a kind of moral basis. That's really the superhero setup I pick up on. But he does these good things, like these, quote, good things, like bringing the tree back to life or the fish, or, but he also does things that are a little bit aggressive. He like frying the guy in the car. I think there were some bullies that he gets at a certain point. But the real flip of the story, the twist, is that he's not like Buddha or Muhammad or Jesus. He's like a negative Messiah. I mean, the quote is, there was another who was born in a manger and died on the cross. That one was sheltered for a while and maturity was unforced. But the new one, speaking of Randy, the new one born for our times would see man's consuming hate of all others, so consuming that the hate extends even to himself. See it in Alabama and Vietnam and even in the close world around him. See it on television and read it in the newspapers and then grow unsheltered in this world of mass and hysterical communication. But he is a kind of like hateful Messiah, right? Or at least that's like where it's going. He's the like an antichrist type figure.
Could be. It's hard to say. The final line is, this one would come to maturity and ripen angry. But you could have a Messiah that's angry, wants to change things, that's angry that his people are not, that his people don't have justice, so he needs to lead them to the justice line. He needs to be an aggressive Messiah. I don't know if he's necessarily a malicious one. However, it's interesting. What's his name? The author, Hensley, does say in the afterword, he says, I kind of regretted writing this story, but no, I don't. I commit to it, but I did at the time feel like I was flaunting God. And he says there was a time when he seriously considered withdrawing the story. So I wonder if it is because he's saying the next coming will be malicious or so angry. I wonder if he's saying modern times are so bad the Messiah will have to be angry, or that he only envisions now a world where things that come down from the heavens will have to be angry and evil or malicious. But it's hard to say what Randy will really do, with that anger.
Yeah.
Maybe fry more people if he...
Let's talk about the style of this, because I feel like, you mentioned quoting from other books, but another thing it does is, so it has a very like depersonalized nature to it. And I think that it's the strongest part of the story. It quotes, or rather it seems like it's spliced in bits of like newspapers. Like one paragraph reads, item, the books were puzzling. There was so much in them that was so clearly wrong, but they were not cruel of themselves, only stupid and careless. He remembered the mother thing and wondered why he had hurt her. The father thing was hurt also, but he had not done that. There was no love in the father thing, but the father thing had never hurt him. It's like what we're getting there is like the boy's perspective, but he's talking about his mom and dad as mother thing and father thing. It's very weird, but the story doesn't stay there. It hops around to all of these different perspectives and texts. It's cool. It's cool.
It is cool. What I thought when I was reading it is old Captain Fiction. I can't remember his name, but Raymond Carver's editor. It feels like he got his hands on this. It feels very Raymond Carver, the style. It is depersonal. Sometimes the sentences are just the boy or the thing, and they're pretty short. The way they position the reader in relationship to the characters is similar to Raymond Carver too. You're kind of concerned, but you're not exactly why you should be concerned. It just reminded me of that style. But I was wondering too, is that the science fiction element of it, where it is, he's saying the father thing, the mother thing? Does he sound somewhat alien to you?
Well, yes, but I mean, I think the science fiction element is the idea of someone being born with supernatural powers. I mean, I think it's very much like who was that one we just read where the Arthur C. Clarke and the aliens look like Satan? Childhood's End.
Oh, Childhood's End. Yeah.
Yeah. How that book ends with this kind of like blossoming of human psychic potential on Earth. And I feel like this book is kind of playing with that idea, but in a negative way. Like, what if the person who, blossoms with this kind of psychic energy is also, rejected by society and turns that hate outward towards others?
I'm not sure if it's going to end up being so hateful. I feel like it is a positive story, Hensley. I guess, I mean, he deliberately heals his dad. When the bullies come after him, he's just trying to give his toys. So maybe he does make the decision at the end to say, I'm going to hold on to these grudges and come after everyone. Maybe. What do you think?
Let me open it up real quick because
Sure.
let's get to the bottom of this. My books app is being slow right now, but because it felt like that was like a twist ending to me. Like, not that he was hateful throughout the story, but that the twist was that it was kind of like a prehistory of a negative. Before the kind of editorial bit about him coming to maturity and ripening angry, there's this paragraph, this interaction between Sam and Randy. The cold, lost eyes watched him, and the next words turned Sam's blood cold. The boy's voice came up in volume and with a ferocity that Sam had never heard before. See things on TV, read them in the books and papers. So many bad things, all hate out there like others hate me. He touched his own small head. So many things in here not ready yet. The eyelids closed tight and a tiny tear came at each corner. Not sorry. I will grow older, Randall said, his voice a cruel, unhuman promise. And I don't know if there's a way to really read that positively. I mean, it feels very unambiguous that it's like a villain turn,
That's true. Okay. It's such a good gesture to go and save, someone while you're telling them that you're going to hurt everyone else. So yeah, unhuman promise, cruel. So he is kind of he's a super villain. You're right. Randall's evil.
Well, it's like a Twilight Zone episode where it's like the one where the kid gets superpowers and forces everyone to do his bidding, It, like when a child gets more power than everyone else, suddenly everyone else's life is hell, basically. I think that in the same way as a Twilight Zone has these kinds of like twist endings, and that's what makes them so interesting. This is doing something similar of like, we seem to be very aware throughout the story that this kid has super special powers. But I think that there's enough ambiguity throughout the meat of the story to where you don't feel like it's necessarily a bad thing. Like it reads like a superhero origin story, but then the twist is that it's actually like a super villain origin story. Or like the wrong person got powers, or maybe even what he's saying more so is that the usage of these powers are defined by the environment of the person who has them. And when that environment is bad, when it's negative and hateful and everyone hates that person, they will use their powers for hatred.
Earlier you mentioned the Antichrist, and I'm thinking now that maybe the Omen or Damien, I can't remember, but boy is born, bad things are happening, but there are scenes in one of these movies where this kid he's done something bad, and then crows just start flying around the house and start crashing into the windows, dying. It's, crows surround everywhere, and you realize, oh, this is definitely bad news. This is the devil's son. So do you feel like you're right, that's what's going on here. But do you think that's a weird, message? Yes, don't bully. That's great. But also, if you bully this one kid, he's going to kill everyone. It's pretty, it's a little intense. I guess I could see why it's a dangerous vision, but what is, other than it being
I've lost all reason to believe that the term dangerous vision is just anything other than a title for the anthology. I feel like I'm not.
That's fair.
I'm not getting any through line, if that makes sense. Like, I think there's a lot of these stories have a kind of like edgy mentality in common, especially like the first 5 or 6. But I think as we go on, I think that it was a kind of like interpret it in your own way, dangerous vision. Like interpret the phrase however it makes sense to you, if that makes sense. I don't know. How do you feel like the term is holding up as we round past the halfway mark in this anthology?
This is book 2 of Dangerous Visions. I feel like in book 1, maybe he is telling the authors, I want your most violent, your most provocative stories. And now that he's had that success, maybe he's backing off and he's being a little more laissez-faire, letting people just send him what he wants. And this is his buddy. There's that picture I sent you. This guy is 6'6". He's huge. And Harlan Ellison, I don't know, he was like 5'8" or something, maybe shorter than that. So Joel Hensley and Harlan Ellison have a picture together, and Hensley's twice his size. So this is his buddy who would bail him out of lots of problems and wasn't a professional writer. He was a lawyer. But I thought his style, I enjoyed it. So maybe not a dangerous vision, but at least a significant story in Harlan Ellison's life, or because of his relationship.
Yeah. It honestly feels more in line with like the horror genre, especially like a Stephen King type story than science fiction or new wave science fiction that we've seen thus far.
It's falling apart at the seams.
No. Yeah, well, I'm still excited to see where it goes. I'm optimistic, and I think that waiting behind the next dozen or so authors that we have ahead of us, we may find our next favorite. So keep at it. See what we find. All right. Talk to you later, Bob.
Talk to you later, Zach.